to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs anyway. My name is Adam Mamawala. I am one of those two. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey. We're both in New York. This is a rare day. Kevin, how you feeling? The Cubs are 2-3. Is the sky falling? Are we going to be okay?
It is amazing how quickly the vibes turned, I think, on Cubs Twitter. And if you want to see us on Cubs Twitter, follow us at Away Games Pod. We out there. And it was funny because the Cubs took a quick 1-0 lead against Cincinnati yesterday, then gave it up. And Hayden Wisniewski gave up several bombs. And people were losing it. And it is funny because the Cubs were 1-3 going in, so going to, I guess, 1-4 feels exponentially worse than 2-3 does, I guess. But the Cubs ended up scoring a bunch of runs, getting a million hits, and now they're 2-3. So I think the sky is definitely not falling from where it was yesterday. I mean, the sky fell several years ago and they haven't repaired it, but like the sky is not further falling. This is what the sky is. This is a team that over most 5 stretches is going to go 2-3, I think. So I don't know. I feel fine, I guess, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2-3 feels a lot more manageable than 1-4. Like, I feel like recording
Yeah.
this at 1-4 would feel pretty bleak. Although, as you may recall, the Cubs started, I believe, 1-6 in 2019, and then went on a weird stretch where they were like the best team in baseball for about a month and a half, and then kind of leveled out at roughly where this year's team may be, which is like a team that wins 80 something games and misses the playoffs. Who knows?
Hmm.
But I do feel like things could be worse, especially because like some of the things that have been problem areas are things that I expect to maybe get better, both in terms of like, well, if Ross knows how to manage, which is perhaps a
Hmm.
presumption that is not fair, but if
Yeah.
we have some guys come up that fill some holes, if we get some better starting pitching performances, because outside of Stroman, like it hasn't. Well, I guess Stroman and Steele were very
Stroman
good.
and Steele were both very
Yeah,
good. Tyone was disappointing. Tyone, and I'm not really
right.
worried about Tyone. I think he's going to be good, and I think he's going to be pretty good for the next several years, which is very nice. He's locked up for 4 years.
Right.
But yeah, after that, Smiley was bad, and
Mhm.
Wisniewski wasn't good. So
Right.
it's. I mean, I guess they ordered the rotation in the correct way after one turn through. It's like,
Sure.
all right, the 2 6-inning shutout guys are at the front, and then yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you're looking for help from the folks down in AAA, I believe Caleb Killian got tagged for 7 runs on a 1/3 of an inning pitched or something
Hmm.
bad like that. So
But no walks. The he didn't walk anybody,
the
and that was
saving
an
grace.
issue, and I will point that out. Not to be a God bless him, we love him, a Bleacher Nation about it, but that
Yeah.
is the optimistic take.
Right. But I don't know. I guess real quickly, let's talk about like things that are encouraging so far, things that are less so. I think certainly Stroman and Steele looking the way they did early on has been great. Swanson, I think, is certainly the number one story just in terms of how hot he has come out of the gate. Once proving forever that spring training means nothing.
Yeah, he's had 3 hits in a game 3 times, and he didn't have 3 hits in spring training. So
Right.
I mean, he's out hit his whole spring training 3 times in five
Yeah.
games, I believe, and he took a couple walks. He's only struck out twice. He's hitting over 500 right now,
Hmm.
and obviously he's going to. The law of averages say that eventually there will be a big slump, but that's fine. He looks really good. I mean, like, obviously, you're hitting 562. That's not a hot take to say that's looking good, but it's nice to see that, like, oh, he wasn't fully lost from spring training. And on the pitching side, Justin Steele, I think we know, is a pitcher who he is an emotional pitcher. He likes the big moment. He likes, when the stakes are for real. And I think Justin Steele, whose velocity was down in spring training, shows us okay, when the games are there, that's kind of when they matter, that's what
Right.
he needs to be his best. And
And even Keegan
Steele, yeah,
Thompson to some degree, right? Like there was a lot of talk
absolutely.
about his velocity, and then on opening day he came out of the bullpen. And sure, it's opening day, everybody's a bit ramped up, but he was touching what, 96, 95, 96?
Yeah, I mean, several miles an hour above what he even clipped in spring training.
Right.
So that's another thing.
Yeah. But Swanson also made, I mean, certainly an early candidate for defensive play of the year. The play that he made during Steele's start on Saturday was
Hmm.
unbelievable. I mean, that's up there with the kind of stuff that we saw Javi doing for a long time. So cool to see that up the middle. Nico is looking pretty good. I mean, it's wild that I think they showed a stat that um, Swanson and Nico were the top two shortstops last year in terms of like plays made above average, outs recorded above average, and now we have
Right.
both of them in the infield. One of whom is not even playing shortstop anymore. So it's a little bit to harken back to the Cubs of old, like when we had Javi and Russell up the middle, who both easily could have played a very good shortstop, but we just had a depth of talent up the middle. So that's been really cool. Seeing Bellinger start to hit the past couple days is cool, but that's also like what you're going to get from Bellinger. I think there's going to be stretches, kind of like Rizzo a bit, but maybe even streakier, where he's going to look like he's on top of the world. And there's going to be other times where it's like, has this guy ever played baseball before?
Yes, right. He went, and I blame it on me because after a couple games, I put like $1 on him to have over point 0.5 hits a couple of times, and he didn't. And then I put $1 on him to not have the hit, and then he hit a bomb
There you
immediately.
go.
So I think yeah, we're seeing him just look less totally lost. And
Yeah,
at the early point of this year, I think it is emotionally important and mentally important for players to just get on the board with something. To just
totally.
you just don't want to see the zero and as your batting average. You don't want to see the zero in the first digit. Really, it's just gross to look at on the scoreboard. And I think guys just feel better when the thing has a 2 or a 3 in front of it. So it's like, all right, I'm not digging out of this gigantic hole. What if I'm historically bad and everyone's talking about it? You know,
Right.
and guys can say that kind of thing doesn't matter, but I think we see that it does early in the season, and it's nice to see some guys start to normalize. And the ever looked over Ian Happ is actually by OPS plus the best player on this team still right now because all
Yeah.
he's doing is walking and getting hits. I think he reached base 5 times the other day in Cincinnati. That's what he does in Cincinnati. But I think I saw his OPS plus is like at 263 right now, which is 163% above average. And
Yeah. Historically,
yeah,
always plays great in Cincinnati,
hmm
where he played in
yeah.
college. Anytime I see, because I remember there being a quote about Schwarber saying like, "Never leave Cincinnati without a homer." Have you heard this anecdote?
Oh no, but he Schwarber never did. So
It's exactly, yeah. It's very much the energy of that Denzel clip that people show that like I'm leaving here with something.
Yeah, and I think that is another thing where guys, they're not playing for stats, but you want your stats to look good. And when you go to the Cincinnati ballpark, much like Coors Field, I bet, you're like, oh,
Right.
I gotta, I'm gonna have a certain amount of homers this year, and if I leave here without one, I sort of gave up,
Yeah,
an
exactly.
opportunity.
Right. In terms of things that are not so great, we talked about this a lot on Twitter, and all of Cubs Twitter was on Monday night, but some of the managerial decisions have been genuinely mind-boggling.
Hmm.
Most specifically, the Patrick Wisdom sacrifice bunt with runners on first and second, nobody out, 3-0 count and 3-1 count. He tries to lay a bunt down. The second, when he gets it down, it's a pop up to the pitcher, and then the Cubs never have those two runners move beyond first and second. Um, Ross did try to explain it, but to me, it still didn't seem like a reasonable explanation. Like, do you understand this at all?
No, I don't think there is anything to understand, honestly. Like, I think he was playing weird 1980s small ball baseball with the guy who led your team in homers last year. And by the
Right.
way, who's been super hot to begin this year, too. Patrick Wisdom's
Yeah.
been killing the ball as well. And he had gotten beamed in the wrist earlier in the game. So I think when we saw him bunting, the out you gave Ross, and that strategy was, oh, maybe he can't swing. But then again, that just goes to show how dumb the managing slash roster construction has been because we have a pile of third basemen, and if you can't replace one with Madrigal playing third, Rios over there, Wisdom, I mean, and then we've got Morel sitting in AAA, but if you are forced to leave an injured guy in, you biffed it a little bit when you have that many guys at that position on your roster. And also, then we see him bunt then and swing away and crush the ball later in the game. So
Right.
apparently he could swing the bat. And this was simply a strategic choice, which made no sense. And people went off on Ross. And obviously, in the early season, that small sample sizes, things are accentuated. But this is a guy who's not new in the job anymore. This
Oh,
guy has been he's been manager since the beginning of 2020, right? Like
yeah,
this guy is now, and that wasn't a full season, sure, but 2021 was a full season, 2022 was a full season. This is not a baby manager anymore. This is
right.
a guy who should not be making mistakes like he was making throughout that game.
You know what it is? I mean, we managers should be held accountable the same way that players are, right? If you've been in the big leagues for 4 years as a player and you forget how many outs there are, you
Right.
can't be doing shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a certain standard that you have to uphold when you've been around for a while. And to your point, like part of it is roster construction, like the fact that Brandon Hughes is injured and we have no lefties at all in the
Right.
bullpen, which was just blatantly exploited in that Saturday game against Milwaukee, where they just ran up a bunch of lefties against us. Also, like Javier Assad pitching a second inning, which seemed a little
It's
surprising. But
that one I'll give a little bit more of a break because he was a starter and he was
yeah,
theoretically competing for that fifth starting position, even though that we knew that wasn't really the case. And he looked great both in that first inning and pitching in Mexico. So I understand. I
yeah,
think
that's
this
fair.
early in the season, you just have to be ready with another guy if the second inning for anybody isn't going great.
Right.
I also think a lot sort of wrapped in with that, a bizarre, inexcusable thing was Adbert Alzolay not being used at all until the third game when the Cubs were down a bunch and the game was
Right.
out of reach, and then he goes 2 innings. And we've seen Alzolay pitched again last night, and he looks amazing. Like he looks great. That looks to be your first
Yeah, I
choice
mean, he gave
two
up a
inning guy.
homer last night, I think, right? But other than
Oh, did
that,
he? Then I
I
must
thought
have
so. Or
missed at that point.
but either way, yeah, I don't know. Is that one of those like he's not in the circle of trust with Ross yet,
Maybe.
sort of things? I
Yeah.
mean, that could be like when famously Madden trusted like two relievers for an entire playoff run.
Yes, right. I mean, possibly, but it is weird that even with as good of a WBC as Assad had, that he would be ahead of Alzolay there, who's done it at the major league level significantly more than
Right.
Assad has.
Well, and the biggest thing in that game was the Mastrobuoni right field situation where, granted, it's a blue pit. That's unfortunate, but I frankly I don't know what happened there. Like I don't know
Hmm.
how you don't lay out for that ball, even if you miss it by 5 feet. Like it's the game is that's the game right there. So I'm not sure if it was just like the moment got too big for him, or somehow he made the calculation that like I don't want to dive and then let it clear the bases. But 2 outs, bases loaded, 1-1 game. You have to leave your feet there. I'm not sure what happened.
No, it's a mistake. It's 100% a mistake by Mastroboni, who's also been the last out of the game a couple games in a row. Which I mean, if you got to have some bats on the bench, like to
Yeah, and one of which he crushed too.
he
Like
crushed. He
yeah,
absolutely hammered. And this is, I think Master Boney has come through basically with a lot of bad luck in high visibility situations. And yes, he should be doing everything he can to lay out for that ball. This is, and I mean, yeah, it's on him, but it's also on the fact that we have two, if you're counting Mancini as three outfielders on this team at this point, basically, because Mastroboni is primarily an infielder. And when you're
yeah,
making a defensive replacement with a guy who doesn't even primarily play the position that you're defensively replacing, your roster's fucking boned. And this is not something that you couldn't see coming. We have Nelson Velasquez sitting in the minors right now, who is on the cusp there. You have Christopher Morel, who's not a good defensive outfielder. But I mean, these are things when we're seeing, oh well, Ross had, what could he do here? Well, someone could do something because Ross and Jed Hoyer are making these decisions together. And if you're put in an unwinnable situation to protect a lead late in the game, someone fucked up. It should, especially this early in the year. You had all the time to lead up to this. It's not like there's been a huge spate of injuries. You're missing Seiya Suzuki, which is a massive thing to miss here because like the offense starts to look. I mean, if the top half of the lineup's as insanely hot as they are right now, a Suzuki in there makes the lineup look somewhere approaching good,
right.
but yeah, like one injury can't throw your complete roster into this kind of like, unmanageable disarray.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I just there are certain guys where Hosmer's gotten some knocks and he's had a couple good defensive plays, and I don't think he's necessarily like on the hot seat, but I think
Hmm.
that depending on how things go in AAA for or AA for some of the guys who are down there, the Mervises of the world, and even Morel, like with a guy like Madrigal, I just don't know how you keep running someone out there if they just never really do anything offensively. Like you have to see that for what it is at a certain point, don't you?
Yeah, well, and that's another managerial thing when they did not use Madrigal to pinch hit against a lefty, I think, and then he ended up coming in as a pinch runner in the last inning. It's just like, I mean, I like really, what are you doing with that roster spot in that case? And I think Madrigal could be a useful player on some team. I think his current iteration fits more as like a classic, almost 80s or 90s, yeah, one type of pinch hit kind of guy
Right.
to come off the bench. But this team's not in a position to have that to be able to use a roster spot on that kind of luxury. And if you're not actually going to use him in those positions, then I don't know what you're doing here. And I think we all think the best version of this team ultimately this year has a Christopher Morel on it. It has, probably a Matt Mervis on it. And
Right.
I'm kind of fine with Mervis starting in AAA in this moment. I think the Morel thing's a little weirder for me. But yeah. Also, want to point out, you're right. Alzolay did give up a 2-run homer yesterday. In 2.2 innings, also struck out 5. So he gave up
Yeah.
one hit in the bomb, and that's not ideal, but it happens in Cincinnati. And 5 strikeouts. That's pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any other Cubs thoughts before we get on
No,
to the big part of the episode, which will be us doing our MLB predictions, which we did not do?
we did not do yet, and I think that is plenty of Cub stuff to this point. I think that catches us up pretty well as we speak today. The rotation is turned over. Stroman's coming back on the mound, and we'll see how they can close things out there in Cincinnati. So yeah, let's do the preview. Do you want to start with the teams or the individual predictions that we do? And we do this every year
Yeah.
where we predict the playoffs, we predict the World Series winner, the MVPs, your Rookie of the Years, your Cy Youngs, and some batch shit predictions. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the divisions.
Sure.
Do
So
you
I'll
have any
start
in the AL East?
AL East. Okay, so we've got in the AL East, I have the Yankees winning. The pitching is really strong if it's at all healthy. Obviously, Rodon is not even in there yet. Severino's always a health issue. Nestor Cortez had to take some time off, but he's back now. But Garrett Cole looks like a Cy Young winner, and I think that rotation is just deep enough to carry them. So I have the Yankees atop the East. Who do you have?
I also have the Yankees, but I do have this weird feeling that like all it seems like whenever the Red Sox are predicted to suck, they just come out of nowhere and win like 98 games.
I mean, they
So
won the
I
World Series once when they were predicted to
exactly,
not
yeah,
be
like
good. Yeah.
I don't think that that'll happen this year, but I'm always a little leery of people thinking that the Red Sox are going to be trash and then having them surprise everyone. But
Right.
yeah, I think the Yankees as well. The Blue Jays have a very good team, but I still think that like the Yankees, at least in terms of winning the division, are still the team to beat. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, but
Yeah, I've got the Blue Jays second in that division, which is maybe I don't know how much hard overhead that is because the Rays do look good, but I don't know. I don't like the Rays. I'm pro
you don't like
labor.
what
I
they
don't like
represent
I don't like
ideologically.
yeah, I find they're smart. They do a lot of things very well, but I don't like the the general vibe of we're cool because we don't pay players.
Yes, the
So
fetishization of undervaluing and underpaying.
well put. And I am pro labor, so that ain't me, dog. So there may be a little hard overhead, but the Blue Jays pitching is the question. Like when Barrios was like actively bad last year, they need a bounce back from him. But I've got Blue Jays in second. So Yankees, Blue Jays raised to top the East.
Yeah.
Do would you like to go Central? Tell me what you got in the second most dog shit division in baseball behind our
I
own.
I have the Guardians because I think that none of the teams are that great, and I think the big separator when a bunch of teams are kind of meh is managing, and I
Hmm.
think Tito is incredible. Like he's one of my favorite people in baseball. Like even when the Cubs were playing against them in the World Series, I think Francona's a great manager, and it's just hard to bet against the Guardians when they just seem to find a way to get it done year after year.
Find a way to get it done is a great way to put it because they do consistently. They're a real pitching factory, and like you said, Francona is such a great match. You know, people argue about how much managers matter, and I think ultimately the verdict is they do matter. I mean, you can quibble over how much, but especially when you're playing a game every day of a season, they certainly manager for vibes, for like workplace morale, for how people feel, for how
Right.
comfortable the players feel. I mean, they affect all these things. And in terms of in-game management, Francona, I think, is always rated really high, and he's got World Series appearances and wins for a reason. So I think that's great. I did have the Guardians to win at first, and then I flipped it. I've got the Twins 1, Guardians 2,
Ah.
White Sox 3. I think those are the three teams that will be competitive. But it's like in a division that's got small margins, Tristan McKenzie being out for a while, I think hurts the Guardians. And the Twins added Pablo Lopez at the top of their rotation, which I think helps. They got Correa back. I think his ankle's fine. And they've got Byron Buxton healthy, DHing a lot right now, but obviously
Yeah.
he's arguably the best center fielder in the world when he's out there. So I think it's going to be mostly a two-team race, but I ended up flipping back to the Twins. But also when we talk about how I'm mad about the how the Rays do business, I also hate how the Guardians do business generally, but they did extend Jose Ramirez, who's now there and
Yeah.
feeling comfortable.
Yeah. The what the hell was I just gonna say? It escaped my brain. Um,
We
oh, the
got
Correa
yeah,
situation. The thing about that that's so interesting is that like it has the potential to look really bad for everyone involved in both directions. Like
totally.
if Correa has a monster year and stays healthy, I think the Mets and Giants are going to feel really stupid. But if somehow Correa breaks his ankle, the Twins have to feel like why did we not see what everyone else saw?
Yeah, I think that's totally true. I think the contract that Correa ended up getting, which is I have to think that's the largest in Twins history. Hitting the $200 million mark over I want to say 6 years, something like that.
Yeah.
It's so much less than what the other agreed to contracts were with San Francisco and the Mets that I think if he breaks his ankle, what, you're missing a year? Who knows how he comes back or something, or a part of a year. I don't know. I think I like it. I like it for the Twins more than I like it for the other teams, or I kind of like the deal for everybody who didn't and did sign him. I think the how bad it can get for the Twins is kind of limited. But yeah, I think
Right.
Twins Guardians there, and then there's the talk about how managers matter, the possible LaRussa's gone bounce of the White Sox. They are a talented team and have
Yeah.
people that are good at the top of that rotation. They should have fucking signed Jose Abreu back. It's really dumb that they moved on from them. And as Cubs fans, we can obviously relate to
Mm-hmm.
stupidly moving on from people who should have ended their career on your team. But I think the White Sox also have a pretty good puncher's chance of jumping over everybody there too,
Right.
with a not LaRussa at the helm.
Yeah. AL West. Who you got?
This is heart overhead for sure, and this is a little bit
The
banking
Athletics.
on. I just love teams that play in front of play in front of audiences that I have exceeded as a stand-up comedian. Yes, that is something I can relate to the A's because we're disappointing and have performed in front of a couple thousand. So I know I have the Mariners, who I think are one bat short, but will really go get it, and the Astros are really good. The Astros are the best team in the division, but it's really hard to repeat. They're
Yeah.
coming off
And
a
they're
really
down in
long
Altuve.
down in Altuve till June. They're down a Verlander completely,
Right.
and there's some Hunter Brown fella who people say is Verlander-esque who might end up winning Rookie of the Year, who's up there in the rotation to replace him. So, I think the Astros are the best team in the division, but I think the
Yeah.
Mariners pitching is really good. And I think, they're they're going to go get another bat at some point, and
Yeah.
it could be tight. So I've got Mariners 1 in that division, Astros 2, Angels 3.
Right. This is certainly head over heart, but I have the Astros winning the division. It's like it's the Astros until it's not, and until
Mm-hmm.
somebody proves that it's not, I think it's the Astros. But buckle up for my playoff predictions, where
I
I
can't
do
wait.
not have the Astros.
I can't wait. Should we? I mean, should we just do the wild cards from the American League before shifting
Sure.
over to the NL?
Yeah. Who do you have?
I'll give you the three I got. I got Blue Jays, Astros, Angels. And the quick explanation for that is, I mean, the Angels have the two best players in the world. I think Anthony Rendon, once he's done choking people in the crowd, I think he's going to have a bounce back after that. I think, and those are three players who can like put up, I mean, at their peak, 10, 10, and 6 wins above replacement on three dudes. They also got Hunter Renfroe in the outfield, which I think
Right.
is helpful. So I've got the Angels there. Astros, no explanation needed. Blue Jays, they got a lot of bats. So those are my. How about you?
Similar actually. We're just flip-flopping the Astros and Mariners. I have Blue Jays, Mariners, and Angels. At this point, you'd think I would have learned to not pick the Angels to make the playoffs ever,
Yeah,
but this
we
one
all
is
should
purely
have.
a heart pick. It's like we finally got to see Shohei and Trout in a big moment against each other. I would love to see them in a big moment with each other,
Yeah.
just because I will continue to feel cheated as a baseball fan if we don't.
Totally. I agree with that. And I think the AL West is going to be interesting because one team is really not trying, and four teams are really trying at various levels of intelligence and competence because the
Yeah.
Rangers are also really trying,
Aren't
but
they
they,
4-0 or 5-0? I feel like they've had a hot start to the year.
yeah. And, the Rangers are saying,
Yeah.
yeah. And they do have DeGrom, who I think is the only one who got a loss. Like DeGrom got beat around a little bit in the first
Yeah.
game, if
Oh,
I'm not
I'm wrong.
mistaken.
Sorry. The Rangers are 3-2. The only undefeated team in baseball is the 5-0 Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, and neither of us even picked them for the playoffs, and they're going to
No.
win 104 games, so that's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
But yeah, I think the AL has, the teams we mentioned. I think the Rays, as you'd say right now, are better than the Angels, are arguably better than the Blue Jays, Twins, and Mariners. I mean, you can argue they're better than everybody, but
Right.
I just don't want to see it, and yeah.
Yeah. Should we move over to the NL and then we'll do the playoff picks after that?
Yes.
All right. I guess you want to start with the NL East?
Sure, and at least I've got the Braves. I know it's boring, they keep winning, but that is the team I'm going to have across the course of 162 games. I've got the Braves. They're just super deep. They've got people locked up for a long time. Acuna is going to hit 40 homers and steal 60 bases. So I think I think over 162. I was between them and the Mets, but I ended up with the Braves.
Yeah, and I mean, weirdly, the Phillies have started 1-4. Not, I mean, the first week only is the first week, but yeah, it's tough. I definitely would have said the Mets. I think losing Diaz is huge.
Hmm.
So that's a big blow for them.
Verlander's down for a bit now.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. So I'm still waffling. I picked the Mets, but I don't feel great about it. I'm gonna stick with the Mets and see if they actually get it done this year. But yeah, the Braves already, they're 4-1. They already look really strong, and you could make a case for certainly three of the five teams in that division. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm going Mets in the
And
East.
I
Yeah,
think the Marlins are a sneaky pick to be around 500, and also why I didn't pick a second AL Central team for wild card between
right.
Guardians Twins is because the schedule is more balanced this year. You play your own division less, you play everybody, and I think that is a thing that works against the teams in the bad divisions because you don't get to take the advantage of like in the NL Central when there was 200 lost teams last year,
Right.
So I think that's where I think you might see a sneaky Marlins around 500,
Yeah.
because they're just better than a bunch of NL Central teams. So.
Yeah. In the NL Central, I think we already talked about this during the Cubs preview, but I begrudgingly have the Cardinals.
Yeah, I basically, do you like hitting or do you like pitching? Is I think your choice between the Cardinals and the Brewers, and I think the Cardinals lineup is just so deep, and I don't know, the pitching doesn't look great, but I think they'll have enough to win.
Yeah.
To beat the Brewers, I think they're going to outpace the Brewers in second by several games. I don't is how I have it right now. But
Yeah,
yeah,
the
if you,
Brewers
I
have
mean,
looked good. I mean, they took 2 out of 3 from the Cubs. They've beaten the Mets 2 games in a row, and I think they've outscored them 19-0 the past two games. So, but they also had a fan just pissing in the middle of the concourse. So,
I
you
didn't
win
see
some, you
that.
lose some. Oh yeah, just fully penis out in the middle of the concourse at AmFam, and I mean. Come on, it's literally a family stadium. What are we doing here?
Yes, Bernie Brewer is on one. Bernie, you have to stick to beer. You cannot go liquor like that. You have to stick to what you know.
um, but sorry, were you saying something else? Should we move on to the
No, that's
West?
it. Cardinals. We both have the Cardinals. Who you got in the West?
In the West, I have the Padres
Me
winning the
too.
division, but buckle up for my
Mhm.
playoff picks.
I'm so buckled here. I've got the Padres too because they just have like half of the fun superstars in the world on that
Yeah, it's
team. I
ridiculous.
mean, and they're all half of them are shortstops or can play shortstops. They're all signed extensions except for Soto, who might be someday. I mean, fucking Jake Cronenworth just signed an extension. As we know, Yu Darvish signed a 6 year extension over there. Who I just Yu Darvish is signing extensions before we hear about anybody who came from the Yu Darvish trade. So God bless. That was a real good use of 3 years of control there. I shout out to Owen Casey. I expect him to be fun. Whatever. So I just think when the Padres, when you put a team
Yeah,
out there, Tatis is going to be back soon. Soto's over there. Machado's over there. It's just a really good team. And this is the year that the Dodgers are sort of intentionally taking a step back to get under
right.
the luxury tax. So yeah.
My three wild cards are the Braves, the Phillies, and the Dodgers.
I've got the Dodgers, Mets, and Phillies.
So
So
similar thought process here. Yeah,
yeah. So you said, oh, so we have the same 6 teams.
yeah,
I
barely.
mean, but
Yes.
this is the National League, though, dude, right? Because it's like there's some sneaky teams that could get in there, and I think the Brewers are clearly the 7 for me, at
Hmm.
least, or that's the 7th team, the best team I have not making the playoffs here. You could make a case for, the Diamondbacks are kind of interesting with young players there, and you can Diamondbacks, Cubs, and Marlins is probably, and the Giants, I
Yeah,
guess, is who you
Giants
throw in
maybe.
as.
I think there's a couple teams. So like the Rockies, the Pirates, the Reds, the Nationals, and I'd say the Marlins also are the teams that are like for sure not in the picture as far as I'm
Mhm.
concerned. But everybody else could be in play for those last few wild cards. I
Yeah,
would be absolutely shocked if we don't get at least two teams from the East and the West.
yeah, oh, absolutely, at least two, and I don't expect a second team from the NL Central for reasons
Yeah.
I said. The more balanced schedule now hurts them, and I'm assuming we both have the Cubs in third. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I've seen them as low as like fourth and fifth, which is not great when you look at the season.
Fangraphs did a fun draft. They went back and forth on their podcast. Ben Lindbergh and Meg Rowley drafting the most fun teams in the league, and the Cubs were drafted 26th in that. And I was like, that is a vibe that to me, I mean, they're the team I'm watching, but it does make sense. And it's funny. My wife was watching the Cubs with me because I've been watching all the time, of course. And we were saying, but beyond it being good, it's just funny how not fun the roster is in comparison to recent years. And
Right.
my wife said it was like if you replaced the Avengers with the cast of 60 Minutes. And I was like, that is harsh, but I think great. We've got Leslie Stahl hitting seventh, eighth, and ninth in this lineup. So.
Oh boy, feels like it's been a real tick 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 on the Cubs over the past few years, huh?
Boy, boom, tick, tick, boom. Yes. So that's yeah. We're exactly the same on our NL playoff picks.
All right, so once we get to the playoffs, this is where it
Hmm.
gets spicy for me because I'm not going to go like round by round. We wouldn't know what the matchups
No,
are, but basically, I got the Mariners winning the AL, baby.
I love that. That outside of the Cubs, the Mariners are part of my sort of dream slash preferred World Series matchup overall here. I think that's great. I think I love the top of the Mariners rotation there. If Robbie Ray can be good, Robbie Ray again, Logan Gilbert's good. There's just there's George Kirby's good. I think they just have a lot, and they have Luis Castillo for a whole year. So I think that is a
Yes, they
team that
do.
can really go hard in the playoffs, and I love that. I have the Mariners in my final four as well. So you have them and you have the Mariners winning the pennant.
I do. Yes. Who do you have winning the
Yes.
the AL?
So that's great. And that would be super fun to see them in their first World Series. I have the Yankees, a very boring pick, but
Boo.
I have the Yankees Mariners in the final four. I have the Yankees ending up they're in the World Series. I think that top end pitching, if it's healthy, is nasty. You know they're gonna buy at the deadline. And Aaron Judge looks like he's starting like Aaron Judge again. He had a homer immediately against the team that almost signed him to begin the year. So that was a funny beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a sort of salt in the wound for Giants. But who you got in the NL?
So in the NL, I have the Padres winning the West, but I have the Dodgers avenging their loss last year and getting past the Padres in some sort of matchup. So I'm kind of torn right now between picking the Dodgers to go back to the World Series or I mean the any team in the East you can make a case for, but I'm going with the
Hmm.
the M the M World Series. I'm going for Mariners Mets. And I'm going to take the Mariners winning the World Series and breaking the hearts of Mets fans. I think maybe Edwin Diaz comes back. They play the trumpets. He
God,
gets rocked.
Jesus Christ, that would be so brutal. I'd feel so bad for the Mets fans in my life that I love, and there's a significant amount of them. But would I enjoy it also? Yeah, I would enjoy it. I got
Yeah.
nothing against Edwin Diaz, but there are a lot of the people who we've run into at Citi Field. I
Hmm.
want a lot of them to be sad, and
Yeah.
that would be nice. So,
So
uh,
I could really embarrass myself with this pick, but I'm going Mariners over Mets.
Mariners over Mets. I am also going Mets to the World Series, and I have the Mets over the Yankees. So I sort of did a flip with your Western, where it's where I have the Braves winning the division, but I have the Mets winning at the end. To me, who knows if these old fuckers are gonna be healthy? But if you have a healthy Verlander and Scherzer at the top of that rotation, Kodai Senga looked real good. I think this
Yeah.
is a short, like in a short series. I think the Mets are built for it, and I think they can sort of run roughshod over people. So I have a local to us Subway series that the Mets win and avenge 2000.
Interesting. I like it. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be fun to be in New York City during that. Like,
Hmm.
obviously, none of us
Totally.
were here in 2000. So,
Absolutely. I think, yeah. So I like our picks. My dream World Series would be outside of the Cubs. I would love to see Padres Mariners and just know I'm going to be
mm,
happy either way for a team that's
right.
never won it. I don't want the Brewers in the World Series because they've never won shit and they're never going to. So I love that personally for me.
Yeah.
Although they're also a team, if they do make the playoffs, can really mess you up in a short series. So
Yeah, it's true.
we've got.
Yeah.
Let's run through the MVPs, I guess we start with. I'll tell you, American League MVP, boring. I've got Shohei Ohtani. He arguably should have even won when a dude hit 60 plus bombs last year. So I think he looks even better now. So I'm going to say Ohtani.
Yeah, I mean, there's no world in which Otani's not the consensus MVP unless he gets hurt. So find some wood to knock on. Like, if he
Hmm.
just when you combine what he does from both sides of the field, as it were, like you cannot tell me there's a more valuable person to their team. So,
No,
um,
and I even think like the calculations of WAR are broken because his isn't even more absurd, you know.
right.
So I think I've got Otani there. NL MVP, I've got Ronald Acuna. I just
Hmm.
think he's going to really pile up the steals in for a really good team. Obviously, the power's there. I think he could end up putting up some sort of like historic stat stuff like we've seen Judge and Otani do. I think he could be the
Yeah.
first 40-50 guy, you know.
Yeah, I think so too, and hopefully he stays healthy as well because obviously he's had his share of injuries over the past few years. But I'm
Mm.
gonna go not a real big swing here, but I'm gonna go Soto for NL MVP.
Yeah, I think he's weirdly he was not good in the latter part of the year last year in San Diego. He actually was outperformed by the guy who replaced him in Washington's lineup, big old Joey Meneses. So
Mm,
so and he started cold this year, but also this is a guy who basically his only comp is Ted Williams statistically at the ages he's been. So I think
right.
it's a pretty good bet that he's going to be nasty the rest of the year. My only reason I didn't go with any of the San Diego guys, him, Machado, Tatis, is just I think maybe their votes will cannibalize each other. My
Yeah,
backup
that
for
could be.
NL MVP. My backup for NL MVP was Mookie Betts, whose people forget about. He put up 6.6 F WAR last year, and he would be the first
Quietly.
since, yeah, quietly, a quiet 6.6 year. And with Trey Turner leaving, he might end up needing to carry the Dodgers. So that's my backup. You
Yeah.
want to go Cy Youngs?
Sure. In the AL, I feel like Garrett Cole looks really locked in right now, so I'm
Mhm.
going Cole.
I also have Cole. I think the caveat is if Otani makes 28 starts, I'll say if Otani makes 26 starts, he'll win the Cy Young because I think it's something he hasn't won.
Yeah.
You can look at the stats and make an argument he should have won last year when he finished fourth in the voting. And my wild card there is Kevin Gausman in
Mm,
Toronto.
I like it.
Hmm.
NL, I got Corbin Burns just showing the Brewers what assholes they are.
I would, I don't like the Brewers, and I've got no feelings about Corbin Burns, but the fact that they nickel and dimed him in arbitration and he's clearly pissed about it. I'm glad he's pissed about it, and I hope he really sticks it to them and leaves.
Yeah.
Ultimately would be great. My pick is Logan Webb. I've got Logan Webb
Ah,
because he struck out a bunch of dudes, but didn't have a great opening day. But he's sort of just like he's more established now. He made all 32 starts, 192 innings pitched last year, and I think he just might be one of those weird dudes who you look up at the end of the year and the Giants aren't that good, but he has 20 wins.
right.
So I think that I've got Logan Webb there, and my backup there is Spencer Strider, who had a K rate of
Mm,
13.8 strikeouts per nine last year. And if he makes all his starts, he is going to be approaching 300 strikeouts. So it's all about being healthy with him. But
right.
Spencer Strider is a good bet, I think, too.
Yeah. Did you have any other things that you wanted to pick? Do you want to go like rookie of the year or anything like that? I don't know how
Sure,
much
I
you.
can do quick rookie of the
Right.
year. In the NL, I've got Jordan Walker because there is no God. Jordan Walker as a 20-year-old just beast with St.
Yeah.
Louis. I'll just say him. And I've got Anthony Volpe, shortstop for the Yankees. I think he's going to be fun too. Who do you got?
He's not even up right now, but I think that Brett Beatty, who's the Mets big like third base prospect, is gonna come up at some
That's
point.
a
And
fun pick.
well, because Escobar has not looked very good at the plate early on, so
Hmm.
I think that he may be on bot time there. Beatty came up last year. He hit a home run, I think, in his first at bat, or certainly in his first game. It was one of those where I picked him up on a flyer in my fantasy league, which I'm not doing fantasy this year, and frankly feel great about it.
Oh, good.
But I think he might be someone interesting to watch. But he's a rookie, so he might come up and hit 180 and get sent back down. So Beatty is kind of my fun pick there. In the AL, Volpe's a fun pick. I think Gunnar Henderson is probably like the easiest pick there, and he showed a lot of what he might be able to do when he was up last year. So I'm going to go more conservative and go with Gunnar Henderson, which like all time great baseball name. That's like Ken Griffey Jr. baseball style right there. To have a first name
Totally.
Gunnar. So
Yeah,
I'm
Gunner's.
going to go Gunnar. Yeah, Gunnar Henderson and Brett Beatty.
I think both leagues have one a classic type of guy who wins Rookie of the Year too, which is a guy who came over from Japan who's a veteran, established and good. So you could see a Kodai Senga, you could see a
Totally.
Masataka Yoshida
Yeah.
in Boston
Yeah.
as well. The last thing I want to say is just uh, wild predicts. I don't know if you have any really
No, go for it.
1,000 to 1 odds. I predict Acuna is going to steal second, third, and home against the Marlins after being beaned for pimping a home run.
Ooh, I
I'm
like
going to
that a
say
lot.
he has personal beef with the Marlins, has since Urania intentionally beaned him several times and hurt him several years ago. He had an all-time pimp job against the Marlins last year where
Hmm.
he basically stole something from everyone's home run celebration between every base where it was like he took
It was
Jazz
like the
Chisholm's.
evolution of dance, but for
It
bat flips.
was. Yeah, he took Jazz Chisholm's like Euro step after he rounded third.
Oh my
He was
god.
doing his own, stuff in between a home and first. So I'm going to say he's going to hit a home run, get beamed, steal second, third and home with these new rules. And my other one is that Brandon Nimmo is going to miss time with a brand new IL designation that just reads wife arrested for protesting Trump's indictment.
All great picks. I got a fun one for you. I got Nick Madrigal hitting 2 home runs this year, both in the same game.
I think that sounds like such a thing that happens.
Yeah,
He's gonna have one game where the wind's blowing out at Wrigley and he pokes two into the foul pole somehow. I think that's great.
yeah. But no other real outlier crazy picks. But I think we've done our job here.
We have. Thanks for listening, everybody. That is the MLB season preview for Away Games. Follow us at Away Games Pod on all the things, but especially, I guess we're most active on Twitter, but also on Instagram. Hit us with your predicts, especially give us, if you're still listening at this point, give us a batshit prediction for what's going to happen this year, and we'll retweet it. We'll talk about it on Twitter. Thanks for listening. Rate and review us, Daddy. We'll see you later.